This episode of the GoldCast is kind of a two-parter. So the first, Raymond and I actually recorded a GoldCast last week that was all about the MLB scandal, really from the perspective of the 49ers and the Giants, and just we asked a lot of questions. It was very trolly and hilarious, and then the news of Kobe passing really, as it did with everybody, really shook us up and really kind of threw off our entire schedule. We only released one episode last week because it just threw everything off, and so we're actually going to tack that episode on the end of the episode that we're recording tonight. We're recording on Wednesday, January 29th at night right now. This episode is going to be all about Kobe Bryant, and I think that we tend to stay out of the big national stuff. We try to kind of keep it real San Francisco based and always kind of from the San Francisco perspective. And this situation was too big for us to ignore, and we all have something to say, and Candlestick Will and I, we live here in Los Angeles. We're right in the thick of it, and it's impossible. It is impossible to ignore this situation. So this episode is dedicated to the Bryant family, all the families that were lost in that helicopter crash, Kobe and his daughter GiGi, and this episode is dedicated to them. It's not sponsored by them. It's dedicated to them. So before we get started, Raymond, why don't you let them know where can they find us?
You can like us on Facebook.com/TheGoldCast, and you can also follow us on Twitter at @_Goldcast, and be sure to subscribe to us via Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Stitcher, all under the same moniker of The GoldCast. Like, subscribe, and comment, because we certainly love to hear from you every single time.
Awesome. And Raymond, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Ray Solis and on Instagram at RaySolis1.
Awesome. And Candlestick Will, where can they find you?
Easiest way is to find me on Twitter at Candlestick Will.
Awesome. And you can find me on Instagram at RudySolis3 and Twitter at RudySolis3RD. All right. We're going to drop that intro, and then we're going to talk some Kobe, because he deserves it. Here we go.
San Francisco, are you ready? This is the GoldCast.
Boom! Welcome to another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis I, baby.
And our esteemed co-host,
Candlestick Will.
Boom. All right. I don't even know where to begin, guys. I'm going to be really honest with you. This is probably the hardest GoldCast ever, and I think we've had nothing but great episodes. I can never really think of an episode that is like this one, where I kind of was dreading it and feeling very nervous and very sad. This is unprecedented. I was really thinking about it and looking back, and this is really unprecedented in American sports. I can't think of, there isn't a single modern era GOAT, right? So you've got, and sure, this is debatable on other levels, and this is not the podcast for that. But you've got superstars, you have Hall of Famers, and then you have GOATs. You have the greatest of all times, right? And Kobe for Los Angeles and for the Lakers is a GOAT. And I put him right up there with Jordan and LeBron, and stats, whatnot. I put him right up there with those two guys. And never in the history of American sports have we had a GOAT so just only a couple years removed from his career pass. I mean, if you think of like some of the major GOATs, most of them are all still here. You've got Tom Brady's here, Joe Montana's here, Michael Jordan's here, Bill Russell's here. These guys are all – Braun is still playing. I mean, these guys are still here. And this guy, only a couple years removed, passes in a way that's so shocking. I still, here we are 3 days later, and I cannot accept that it's actually happened. All the buses in Los Angeles say R.I.P. Kobe, and so it'll tell you what the bus route is, and then it flips to R.I.P. Kobe. And I actually took a couple pictures of them. This has just impacted this city in a way that I've never seen before. I think this city. Kobe. He played his entire career here. He's been here for 20 years. They watched him grow up from literally a teenager to a father, to a champion, to a father, and now to his passing. And there's nothing like this. I can't think of any other city. I mean, we love Joe Montana, but Joe Montana, it's not like he's sitting here saying about how much he bleeds red and blue and red and gold, and is talking to all the players and is going to the games. I mean, he's a figure, but he's very much removed. He played for another team. If anything, I think if the NFL never called him again to be on another interview, I don't think Joe would actually prefer it. And if anything, he avoids the limelight. And LeBron is never stopped chasing it, and always with the purple and gold as his moniker, as his colors. Magic Johnson's the only other Laker. But for this generation, he is the GOAT. He is their GOAT. And for so many players, he's a GOAT. It's amazing. The Richard Sherman coming out and saying that he guarantees a 49er victory. I'm paraphrasing, but he guarantees a 49er victory for Kobe, that he walked off on his Achilles injury because Kobe did. I mean, hearing just the impact that this player has on other players. Bill Belichick came out yesterday and said that his influence far exceeded his actual ability as a player. And he said that never in his life did he see the Patriots more in awe of an athlete than when Kobe was there talking to him in the locker room. And he just demanded a level of reverence. That was the word he used, a level of reverence that nobody's ever had. And this city, the unique relationship he had with LA was so unique. I can't think of another athlete in the country that has that with any other team. There's close ones, but not like that. I mean, I think LeBron would have been close. I would say Curry might be the close with the Bay, but even then, he's not San Francisco's. He's the Bay Area's, And it was just really, I don't know, man. I don't know what can be said that hasn't already been said a million times, but this is one of those moments that I'll remember for the rest of my life. Where were you when Kobe passed? Like, I'll never forget this. It was instantly concrete in my mind. And this was, in my opinion, probably the saddest day I've ever personally experienced in sports in terms of just the greater totality of what sports means. This is the saddest day that I've ever seen, the saddest day for the NBA, the saddest day for sports for LA. And yeah, who wants to take the floor?
Well, I mean, I was, when I was in college, I had built a website, and the purpose of it had to do with just learning how to build a website. But once I did, I started making pages I wanted to have, and so one of the pages I created was literally a page of players who had died during their careers, and wanting to have kind of a place where I could put information about them when they were born, when they passed away, so I could have like kind of a tribute page to them. And just kind of going through it, the names like Brian Piccolo, that Brian's song was based off of, that anyone from Chicago, obviously knows well. Players like Roberto Clemente that everyone knows about, Thurman Munson of the New York Yankees. But then even some players that maybe, not everyone knows unless they were living in that time or played in that era, like a Jerome Brown for the Philadelphia Eagles, or like a college star like Hank Gathers from Loyola Marymount, or Len Bias, who played at Maryland and was drafted by the Boston Celtics. Someone like Derek Thomas, who's a Hall of Famer, tragically died in 2000. Players like Drazen Petrovic dying in a car accident, and Reggie Lewis passing away from the Boston Celtics in the 90s. So there's players like that. More recently, players like Sean Taylor of the Washington Redskins, Jose Fernandez, who everyone in Miami revered, and then even recently someone like Tyler Skaggs for the Anaheim Angels. And, with all of those names, even players like Sean Taylor, who's a perennial Pro Bowler, Roberto Clemente, who's a Hall of Famer, Derek Thomas is a Hall of Famer, Kobe Bryant is just a bigger figure than all of them. He's a bigger name. More people know who he is. I think had it just been Kobe, if he was the only person on the helicopter, if he was flying his own helicopter, it would have been almost as tragic. The fact that 9 people died makes it so much harder. The fact that one of them was his daughter, who was only 13, makes it even harder. The fact that we also lost John Altobelli, who was an incredible junior college coach in baseball, just kind of hits just the sports world even that much more. And the fact that his daughter and wife were on the helicopter as well. Just to lose 9 people without any chance of survival so quickly like that, it doesn't give you a chance to process it. A much less paid attention to death this week is former Minnesota Viking defensive end Chris Dolman died from a disease that he's had. And
that's right.
I saw that
about that one.
And so people weren't really paying attention to that, but people who knew the situation knew that it was coming because he had a disease that was very aggressive. And that being said, even when you have time to process a death, it doesn't make the loss any easier. Nobody had time to process this. You wake up in the morning and you look at your phone and TMZ says Kobe Bryant died. And every single person who's been interviewed over the last few days has said, I thought it wasn't true. And part of the reason people thought it wasn't true is because it's just too fast. To assume that someone's alive and happy and healthy and then all of a sudden they're gone, it's too hard for our brains to comprehend. And, with every person that I mentioned, on that list of athletes, I'm leaving off a lot of athletes that we've lost over the years during their playing careers. Kobe obviously has been retired, but whoever it is, whether it was a Darryl Kyle or a Eric Turner, there's a lot of names we can mention, but people knew Kobe in all walks of life. To be a LA Laker for 20 years is different than playing for the Kansas City Chiefs for a decade or playing for the New Jersey Nets for a few years like Drazen Petrovic did. So it's just a bigger amount of fame and more people. You're just aware of who you are. The fact that he won 5 championships, the fact that he's been in our consciousness now since the mid-90s, there's a level to that that's just bigger than everybody else. And then you alluded to it, Rudy, when you mentioned about the other players. I mean, players have come out and said, this was our Jordan. This was the guy who we all wanted to be like. The only reason we're playing in the NBA is because we saw Kobe Bryant play basketball and said, I want to be like him. They wanted to be like Kobe. The people before him wanted to be like Mike, and the people before him wanted to be like the doctor. It's just there's always one guy that people gravitate to. And there's kids today that, I want to be like LeBron or I want to be like Steph. I mean, the number of athletes that have that kind of pull, it's 1 or 2 guys at a time, and Kobe was one of those guys. Every other person I mentioned, outside of maybe Roberto Clemente, none of these guys on that list had that kind of gravity where, someone like Clemente, pretty much every Latin player wanted to be like Clemente. But, when you look at what we're seeing with all the outpouring of love and heartbreak about Kobe and what he meant to people, it's just something that's never going to stop hurting. It's going to hurt differently or less maybe over time, but it's not going to stop hurting. And I think the biggest reason for that is not just because of the unfulfilled life we thought Kobe was about to have, but the unfulfilled life that Gianna was about to have. That she was going to more than likely end up playing at UConn. She was more than likely going to end up in the WNBA. And who knows what else could have happened in her life. And with Kobe by her side, you know, what better mentor and coach to have. So, you know, I think feeling like we were all cheated out of that, especially the two of them being cheated out of that opportunity, you know, is just heartbreaking. And then to know that there's 7 other people on that flight that were cheated as well. It's just something that's never going to be easy to talk about. It's never going to be easy to move on from. And in some ways you don't want to move on from it because you want to remember them.
Agreed. Raymond, what are your thoughts?
It's really kind of hard to articulate because you know, death is not an easy thing to deal with on any level. I lost a friend last Friday who accidentally fell downstairs and broke his neck. And so I was with his wife over the weekend. So it was just kind of it was a tough weekend overall. I found out about Kobe first, and then the very next day, or that same day, I believe, I found out about my friend. And so it's just been kind of a little bit of a emotional weekend for me, you know, and I know a lot of people, you know, Candlestick Will, I love how you mentioned the other families because I feel like it's, for a lot of people, it's been easy to kind of, you know, unintentionally gloss over them. You know, I know there was a mom and a daughter, and the Altobelli family, as you mentioned, the Chester family, the Mauser family, the pilot, Zobayan. That's his these are all last names. But those all sting too. You know, I don't know those people as well as I obviously followed Kobe's career as most of us did. But, you know, for me, I like to kind of spend moments like thinking of the good parts. You know, that's how I kind of treated death ever since, you know, Rudy, ever since long ago when we were younger, we read that Robert Stack, the original host for Unsolved Mysteries, the crime show back in the day, when he had on his will, he had a written request that everyone who knew him was supposed to get together and have a huge party. He didn't want a traditional funeral. And ever since I learned of that, I've always tried to treat death in the same manner, whether it's my own our own family or friends or, you know, national icons, musicians, actors, those kinds of people. So I've always kind of just like, all right, well, how can I remember this person in a positive light, you know, despite the tragedy, which is obviously really hard to not think of. But to me, like when I think of Kobe Bryant, I think of the guy who spent his whole career idolizing Jordan and really trying to maximize his potential and make his stamp in the NBA in a similar vein. You know, that was always the impression I got, that he was really on a mission to kind of like, hey, I want to make an impression in the NBA the same way Michael Jordan did. And to be honest, you know, ring number aside, Kobe certainly did that and was certainly doing that outside of his career. You know, Jordan just kind of quietly owns another team and does interviews here and there, but he's not necessarily the same icon as he was when he was playing, whereas Kobe was making these giant strides outside of life after basketball, not only with his family, but also in his own personal creative endeavors. You know, he had won an Oscar. I thought that was amazing to see that. The only other person I know that I appreciated and respected as much to do something like that was the hip-hop artist Common, who also won an Academy Award for his work doing music. I forget which film, but that was the yes, thank you. that was pretty awesome too. So I really admire his ability to kind of keep that same focus and that same pursuit of success and achievement going after the sport, where, you know, I didn't necessarily see that from Jordan, and there's, you know, I don't necessarily want to take away anything from Jordan, but, you know, to me, the impression I got was that Jordan really poured all of that into his playing career, and Kobe seemed to also pour that into his playing career and also poured that into his life and his family. Not to say that Jordan doesn't have that with his family. You know, he's got a family too, and he's still very much involved in the NBA and, you know, does little things here.
But there was a visibility to what Kobe was doing.
There was. He was, you know, he was clearly a thirst for knowledge and always wanted to learn new things and try new things and, you know, challenge himself with, you know, new adventures, whether that was with his family or that was with his investments or in the creative side of himself. So that stuff, I think that stuff resonates with a lot of people because it's inspiring. And you know, some people get offended or bothered at the fact that people get so hurt or bothered when a national icon passes away. But part of the reason why we are affected the way we are is because we look up to these people and we are creating our own stamp in our own lives. And a lot of that motivation is, you know, derived from their pursuit and their motivation in their lives, and drawing from them and taking little bits of their little formula and incorporate it into our own life formula and personal achievement and success. So that, you know, that's one of the reasons why we hear about it a lot, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so I know sometimes people get irritated with that, but it's not idolization so much. A lot of times it's just, you know, appreciating someone's ability to achieve in life and also wanting to and being inspired by that within your own life. And that's a really big deal, and that's important. And that's why we spend, you know, a lot of time remembering and respecting and talking so positively about people that, you know, especially in this case, because it was so tragic and abrupt and so sudden and nobody saw it coming. It wasn't like he lived a long life and he was 85 and his kids were all grown up. You know, now the rest of his family has to go on without him. That sucks. I can't imagine that. I mean, Candlestick Will, you're a father yourself. You know, I can't imagine how this has kind of hit you from that angle, because I'm not a father. You know, I'm an uncle but it's a different ball game. So, you know, that, but to me, that's kind of what it meant to me. Like I saw it and it was sad, and now I'm just kind of trying to view it in, you know, remembering all of the amazing things that he did and was doing, and also how that is inspiring to my own life. Because I think if I knew him personally, that's probably what he would want me to do.
It's funny you say that because on Monday I got up and I watched. It's one of the few times I don't really watch the news. I watched the news the entire day. I heard about it minutes after I think it was reported. I think it was reported around 11 because I heard it right at around 11. Like every Twitter, I went on to Twitter and everything had been 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. It had just been released.
Yeah, it was my Bleacher Report that came in, or Yahoo Sports. I can't remember.
And I watched it all day long. And on Monday, I started watching it again. And I mean, the whole thing, I cried on and off all Sunday and Monday morning. And then finally, I was like, I got to stop. And I thought about this. I said, you know what Kobe would do right now? He would have taken the day to mourn, which I did on Sunday. Then he would get up off his ass and he'd get back to work because he's got a life to lead. And it's not going to be led here. He'd get up and get back to work because that's what Kobe would have done. And so I got up and I started getting back to work on our GoldCast, and I edited all day, and that's what I did. And there was, if we're going back, I kind of like what you said. I actually looked this up because I was just interested. I looked up the definition of the black mamba as a snake, and it says, this is from Wikipedia. It says, the black mamba is a species of extremely venomous snake, a member of the Elapidae, I think is how you say it. Elapidae, a member of the family Elapidae, native to parts of sub-Saharan Africa. It is the second longest venomous snake after the king cobra. Mature specimens generally exceed 6 feet 7 inches and can grow to 9 feet 10 inches, although 14 feet have been reported. It says here, and this reminds me of Kobe, the species is both terrestrial, ground-living, and arboreal, tree-living. And I go, well, Kobe was as comfortable dribbling through the defense as he was dunking the basketball. It inhabits savanna, woodland, rocky slopes, and in some regions, dense forest. And I was like, that's pretty badass. It goes, in a threat display, the black mamba usually opens its inky black mouth, spreads its narrow neck flap, and sometimes hisses. It is capable of striking at considerable range and may deliver a series of bites in rapid succession. Its venom is primarily composed of neurotoxins that often induce symptoms within 10 minutes and is frequently fatal unless anti-venom is administered. Despite its reputation as a formidable and highly aggressive species, the black mamba attacks humans only if it is threatened or cornered. So That's true. That last part definitely isn't. I was thinking back to just, pardon my language, how fucking badass Kobe was to watch to play. And one of the things that I loved about him was that he was just a killer. And he didn't always succeed. But like Jordan, he didn't always succeed. But you're down by 8. You got 30 seconds left in the game. I want only 1 or 2 players of the big 3. If we go Kobe, Jordan, Bron, I want Kobe or Jordan. You know, those are the 2 guys. It's Kobe and Jordan. One of those guys is who I want to have the ball with 30 seconds left, down by 8. I want one of those 2 guys with the ball because I believe they're going to get us there. But what were you going to say, Candlestick Will?
Well, no, I was. I think when we, a lot of times, especially when it happens like this, where someone passes away, suddenly or tragically, we tend to try to put as positive a spin on things as possible sometimes. But the reality is that a lot of people looked at Kobe on the court as an asshole, and it's because he was, and he wasn't trying not to be. He was trying to be an asshole. He was trying to kick everyone's ass. He was trying to stomp on your throat if you showed weakness, and he was trying to beat you. And I think one of the things that I've taken from people's conversations the last few days online and just kind of how people have shared their feelings about Kobe is that at the end of the day, he was a guy who went after greatness for 20 years in the NBA with the kind of, motivation and the kind of desire you would hope your favorite player has. And we really hadn't seen that since Jordan. And we were pretty much seeing it with Curry. But even with that, Kobe and Michael were so maniacal when it came to, the stories you hear about, getting up at 5 a.m. or never sleeping, or, the game's over and go hit up the gym and hit 200 more shots. And, just the way that they would put so much time and effort into their craft, and anything they did, they were going to be super competitive. Kobe was on the All the Smoke podcast with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson, and I was listening to it a couple days ago, which was so much harder to listen to, considering that he had just passed away. But, he was on that podcast talking about how, him and Jordan were very similar in that if they were going to go compete for something, they were going to compete until they won. And he said on that podcast that the only difference between him and Michael was that if it's something he's not good at, he probably wouldn't, agree to do it in the first place. But if it's something he's good at, he's going to have just as much of a desire to beat you and do whatever it takes, to win. And Bob Myers of the Warriors had told a story about how he was an extra on a commercial shoot because he was one of his agents at the time, and they were playing a game of horse before the shoot started, and Bob Myers was winning, and only had one more letter to get Kobe, and they were like, "All right, Kobe, we're ready for you," and he's like, "Hold on, I got to win this game first," And Bob Myers is like, "Dude, just go do the shoot." And he's like, "No, we're gonna finish. I got to beat you," And it's just like so. And then of course he came back and won. So it's like when you think about whoever is listening to us right now, if you picture your current favorite athlete, do they work as hard as Kobe? And the answer is no. And that's unfortunate, because that's the reality in pro sports, especially. Once you reach the mountaintop, it's hard to also then, once you get there, to continue to give every single ounce of effort every single day, because you realize that's actually not very healthy. And we've heard stories, and we saw it in real time of Kobe, getting injured and then just playing on the injury because whatever, I gotta win this game, and playing half a season hurt or entire seasons hurt, and trying to fight through injuries. And so for any slander he's ever gotten from people or anyone who says that other players are better than him, whether it's Jordan or Magic or LeBron or whoever, it's like, what, he was a legend for a lot of different reasons, but he's one of the all-time greats. And if you put him in the top 10 or you put him in the top 15 or you put him in the top 20, whatever you're doing, you're putting him with only amazing people. If you think that Jerry West was better, it's like whether you're right or wrong is irrelevant. He belongs in the conversation. And I think the fact that no matter what viewpoint you had of him, if you saw him play, and a lot of people that are a lot younger maybe didn't even get a chance to really see him play, but regardless, he was one of the all-time greats. And if people want to continue to debate, who's better, him or Jordan, who's better, him or LeBron, it's like, you can have those conversations, but the fact that you're not having those conversations about a lot of other players that played when he played, but you're always bringing Kobe's name up when you talk about those other elite players, is the most important part of that conversation. Whenever I've had a conversation with someone online about, who the all-time greats are in the NBA, Kobe's in my top 10, but I think I have him like 10th. I have Duncan ahead of him. I have Larry Bird and Magic ahead of him, and I have Jordan and LeBron ahead of him, but I have him in my top 10 of all time. So, it's not slander against Kobe Bryant, because he deserves to be there. His 5 rings are a big reason he deserves to be there, but his 20 years of playing the absolute peak of his powers, as much as he could possibly give, if you can't respect that, I was a Warrior fan, so I hated watching Kobe kick my team's ass every year. But you have to learn to respect that, otherwise, what are you doing? So, I think that's one of the biggest takeaways for me as far as Kobe the player. The other part of it, and Ray, you alluded to it with asking me about how I deal with this with my own son, and the fact that he was with his daughter doing what he wanted to do and doing what he loved, and he was helping her reach her goals. I mean, we're all gonna be gone at some point in this world. That's one of the only guarantees, right? Death, taxes. It's one of the only guarantees we got, right? So, but your kids gotta outlive you, right? Like that's one of the first rules of a family, is you never want to see that happen. So, my heart breaks for Vanessa. My heart breaks for Gigi's sisters and what they're going through, because she didn't get to live her life. But yeah, I'd give my life up in a heartbeat if it meant my son got to live longer. And he's 4, but I already have that in my head, that in my heart, that my son's everything to me, and my wife and him are if everyone else went away but they were still here, then I'd still have something. And if I lost both of them, then it'd break my heart every day. So I'll never know what Vanessa's going through, because I didn't know Kobe personally. I didn't know GiGi personally. So even if I had a similar situation, I wouldn't know exactly what she's going through. But it doesn't get worse than having to say goodbye to a son or a daughter. That's the ultimate pain. But that's the part that's going to make it really hard for me to ever look at this and not just be completely gut wrenched about what happened, because that's just not fair. People that say everything happens for a reason, these are the kind of moments that I have a really hard time with that statement. I do believe that we can learn from everything that happens, and that everything that happens can give us an opportunity to learn from and grow from. But the idea that everything happens for a reason makes me sick to my stomach sometimes when tragedies like this happen.
I agree with that. I absolutely do. I think that's probably his most lasting legacy, is what you really touched on there, Candlestick Will, is this idea that the Mamba mentality, quote unquote, that he loved to talk about, this idea of pushing and striving and working harder than anyone else to be the absolute best. I think there's a lot of good to that mentality, and I think if anything, taking a piece of that mentality and applying it to whatever you do is probably the best way to honor Kobe's memory, and it's probably the best way to allow him to live on. Is to you don't have to go the full Mamba, because very few people can, and that's why there's only one Kobe. But taking this idea of the Mamba mentality and just taking a piece of that and applying it to what you're chasing, applying that relentlessness, a sense of that relentlessness, a sense of that endless desire to succeed at what you want. I think that's really healthy. And I think, if anything, that's probably the one thing that Kobe seems to have just somehow, so many men wanted to be him and wanted to be like him. Like, it really impacted me when Sherman said I walked off on my torn Achilles, because Kobe did. I was like, that was blown away. Patrick Mahomes said that he watches Kobe clips before the game to pump him up. And it's just like his influence spreads far beyond just hoops and far beyond the NBA. And as we've all kind of mentioned, for as terrifying and as brutal as he was on the court, all it ever seemed to do was just really garner a sense of reverence and respect from his peers, from his rivals, from players from other sports. I mean, they showed a lot of soccer teams over in Europe taking moments of silence for Kobe the day after on Monday and Tuesday. Clearly, his impact as his psychological and philosophical impact as a player feels like it stretches far beyond the 5 rings he achieved, and that's pretty mind-blowing. It's really, really mind-blowing to see that how many players have tried to take that piece of him and tried to apply it to their own competitive spirit, to their own training, to their own handling of their respective sports, and it's just very impressive. And it is, and it's really sad. It's really sad that Kobe is gone. And I heard someone say that I thought was really great. He was the type of player that could incite anger, hatred, love. He could incite all of that out of sports fans, even from his own fan base. I grew up loving the Kobe Lakers teams. Loved them. I loved them. Our growing up as a kid, we were always kind of a 2-team household. We rooted for the Warriors during the regular season, then we root for the Lakers in the post, because the Warriors, there's many, many years they wouldn't get there when I was very young. And, my father was really captured by the Lakers-Celtics rivalry of the 80s. I have memories of distant now, but I have memories of him watching those games and just being really into it and enjoying them. And that was kind of my first introduction to basketball, was through the Lakers and the Celtics. And Kobe was special. And he was really kind of creating the second act. Raymond, you and I were talking earlier about how he was, he really was successfully rebranding himself after, and we use that term. I don't necessarily think he was thinking of it in that terms, but he really had turned into this father that was just so proud of his daughter, of GiGi, and so proud of who she was becoming. And I've watched some of the interviews, and he's just literally a dorky, pumped up dad. He was talking about this tournament she was at and how she was at the free throw line, and that the whole stadium stopped. It kind of sounded like there were multiple games going on at the same time. I don't know how big this venue was. I'd never heard of anything like that. But he said that the whole audience stopped, and when she was at the free throw line, if she made the 2 free throws, they'd win the game. If not, they'd lose. All the cameras were on her. The phones are clicking. Everyone's watching, and Kobe wanted to take a timeout. He wanted to take a timeout to talk to her and go, hey, okay, give her some advice on how to deal with the moment. But he decided, he looked around and he's like, you know what, I'm gonna take a step back. I think he was on the Jimmy Kimmel show talking about this. He's like, I'm gonna just see how she does. And then she makes both baskets. They win the game, and he's pumping his fist and he's talking, and the audience cheers. And I was like, he's just a dorky dad in this clip, and it made me cry more, to be honest. I was like, just to think about as you mentioned, the loss of his daughter, and he really, this second act, like Raymond, you said with the Oscar, we're never gonna know now, and I have no doubt that we weren't even remotely done seeing what the next level of Kobe was going to be, and and through his daughter, it would not have surprised me at all if she's Kobe too on the court. Maybe she's the first girl that dunks all the time. Who knows? But unfortunately, that's all gone. And but it is really sad that Kobe is gone, because love him, hate him, his determination to succeed was undeniable and awe-inspiring and just inspiring. And I think that a little piece of Mamba mentality never hurt anybody trying to achieve a dream. Ray, do you have any final thoughts? Anything to say?
Just that he will be missed, but his legacy lives on, and not only through what he's accomplished, but also through his the family that did survive.
That's a great point, and I have no doubt that they will move on to achieve things as well, because that this will be used as a catalyst for more great things from the Bryant family. Candlestick Will, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just a couple. I mean, you had mentioned before when you were talking about just kind of everything that was going on, how you kind of had to act like Kobe and kind of get out of your own way and your own sadness and say, hey, if Kobe was here, he would just get up and go. And I would say that while that Mamba mentality is a real thing, and it's certainly a way of approaching things that as human beings we have to be cognizant of the fact that just because that's Kobe's approach, it doesn't mean that we can handle that. I think a lot of players were playing games they shouldn't have been playing these last couple days because they were being kind of forced to, and they really could have used the games being postponed. And we saw a lot of players kind of play over their heads and, have amazing scoring nights and be able to accomplish a lot of things. And so that sometimes will happen when tragedy strikes. But, the mental health side of things is, while we all want to have that Mamba mentality, we also need to be very careful of how we approach our daily lives and be really careful about our mental health, because it's such a fragile thing, and when we're dealing with tragedy, it really is something we have to be more careful of sometimes. So this week, I think people are more aware of when they see people like Shaq, breaking down, and they see players breaking down like a Larry Nance or a Kyrie Irving, on the court, because they were, missing their friend, and James Harden and Chris Paul and others, sit out a game because of personal reasons, which obviously was they didn't want to play because of what happened with Kobe. It's just everyone grieves differently, and we have to allow space for these players to grieve. and give them that opportunity, and give ourselves an opportunity to grieve, and when we're ready, have that Mamba mentality, but we might not all be ready yet. And the other thing I would say is, if we want to keep Kobe and Gianna in our hearts, in our minds, then we have to be more willing to invest in women's sports, because that would be the best legacy for Kobe and Gianna, is to lift up the women that are still around and the women that are still here, that need our support as sports fanatics and sports fans, is to realize that not just the WNBA, but just women's sports in general, the U.S. Olympic soccer team and all these different female athletes out there, from Serena Williams to the high school girl that no one knows about, that there's some amazingly talented women out there in a lot of different sports that people don't talk about and don't get anywhere near the attention that some of these guys in the NBA that don't deserve time, like an Alex Caruso, compared to some of the amazing talents of a Diana Taurasi or someone like that, that we need to invest in female sports and women's sports, because that's what Kobe would have wanted. So if we want to take that Mamba mentality, that's kind of an area of sports that we need to address more and put more time and effort into, and money into.
Well said.
Very well said. Yep, very well said. Agreed, Ray. Very, very well said. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. This was a great show. Really, really good show. Thank you for listening, and our condolences to all the families whose lives were lost in that helicopter crash, all the families who now must live on and carry on without their loved ones. I can't even imagine what a tragedy like this feels for them. Whatever we are feeling, it is 1,000 times worse. And we're going to wrap this up, and then we're going to close this down, and we're going to end with the cheating MLB, the cheating Astros scandal that has been sweeping the MLB. It's a much lighter conversation between Raymond and I that we had last week. Probably the trolliest GoldCast of all time. So let's move on to a positive note, and that episode's coming up right now. For many of our 49ers fans who maybe are knee-deep and maybe only follow baseball casually, or only check in after the All-Star break, or don't even follow MLB, and they're like, what is this story all about? Essentially what had happened was the Astros had developed a system for stealing the catcher's signs. And beyond that, apparently they were using video technology to record and capture the signs they were using. So there was a monitor in the dugout. They would see exactly the signs the catcher gives to the pitcher. For those not that familiar, the catchers and pitchers communicate on what the pitch is going to be before the pitch is thrown. They decide together, and therefore the catcher knows where the ball's going, and everyone understands. The offense, obviously the batter who's facing the pitcher, cannot see the signs being directed to the pitcher. Now they use video technology. There was a small monitor, and then when certain pitches were coming up, there would be sounds that they would do that they would bang on a drum, and has a bang on a trash can, and they could give this low booming sound. But the way they would bang on the drum would then alert the batter as to what type of pitch was going their way. And some people say that this is why the Nationals were able to beat the Astros in this past World Series, is because they had been clued into that the Astros were stealing signs, and they actually changed their signs every game, even per pitcher, to avoid confusing the Astros and not allowing them to do this. But in the 2017 World Series, where the Astros and Dodgers went 7 games, that series is one where apparently the Astros were using stolen signs to get an edge on the Los Angeles Dodgers. So, Raymond, why don't you put your 2 cents on this? This has been kind of crazy. So, I mean, that's just the start of the scandal. Then what happens is MLB finds out, fires all the managers. I mean, even managers that came out of that camp to other teams, Red Sox, Mets, and now we have a situation. We have a situation where the reason the players weren't punished is because the players were actually the MLB and the union, the MLB Players Union, basically came to an agreement, and they were like, "We will, you can, we will." The MLB said, "We will give you immunity if you tell us everything you did. You will not receive any punishment." So basically, all the front office people were fired as a result of this. Some people have claimed that the World Series should be stripped from the 2017 victory over the dumbass Los Angeles Dodgers. Some people say it doesn't matter. Some people have even said, all the teams are cheating. They were just cheating better than most. Where do you land on this? And in particular on that 27 World Series. Let me ask you a question. I want to know where you land on it. And then I want to know, should the 2017 World Series be stripped from the Astros? Those two things. But first, just your overall opinion about this entire situation.
One of the questions that I don't hear a lot of people asking is why did Mike Fires, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but why did he reveal it when he did? Like, is it because they lost the World Series and they didn't retain him? Like, I don't get it. He's got a ring. So he was part of the team in 2017. So why did he choose now to blow the whistle on that? Like, what did he have to gain? What was with that?
There's got to be bad blood, right?
It's something. It's something,
bad blood between him and the Astros.
Childish, or, however you want to phrase it. It seems childish to me. Because it's like, wait a minute. If you were part of this, well, Mike Fires is a pitcher, so, he could only I don't know who specifically was deciphering the calls. I don't know if that was another catcher and a pitcher tandem that was doing that. There's some details that are still missing that haven't been revealed. So I don't know if there was a rotation of players. The only people that can decipher Steins are other hitters. Catchers would seem to be the best person to help decipher that. And of course, other pitchers. Those would be the two best outside of batters. In fact, they'd be more qualified to do the decoding process than the batters would be, and then they would just relay the pitches to the batters. But I'm just curious why Mike even did that. I know Pedro Martinez, former Hall of Fame pitcher for the Boston Red Sox, came out and said, like, hey, if he was to do it when he was playing for the Astros, then I would say, this is a quote, I would say Mike Fires has guts, but to go and do it after you leave the Houston Astros because they don't have you anymore, that doesn't show me anything. You're just a bad teammate. That's kind of what he said. And, it's like, if you tell me, I think this is another quote.
Is this like a snitches get stitches kind of thing?
Something like that. Like, he went off. There's a lot more quotes to it, but that was kind of the main one that came out to me. But there's a lot more that he said that, if you guys want to look it up, you can look it up. Just look up Pedro Martinez, slams Mike Fires for blowing the whistle. It's hard to know. It's hard to say like that the pitch, like they won a championship. So the sign stealing obviously assisted in that regard, but the Dodgers still pushed it to 7 games. So
they still won 3 games.
Yeah. And by the way, they won games in Houston. So this what, they won, I think, game 3 in Houston. They lost game 3.
I'll go through all the games for you. So, game 1 is in. So, LA has home field advantage. Game 1,
right.
3-1 in favor of the Dodgers. Okay. Game 2, 6-7 in favor of the Astros.
Then they can't. From what I understand, they can't cheat away. They can only cheat at home because of the way the cameras are positioned and at their home field.
There you go. So then, game 3, they're in Houston. They win 5-3. Game 4, still in Houston. Dodgers win 6-2. Game 5, Dodgers lose in a heartbreaker. Astros win 13-12 in the 10th inning. Maybe the Dodgers still in signs too. They were kind of accused of that as well. Next one, Game 6, they're back in LA. Dodgers win 3-1. Game 7, Astros win 5-1. They destroy
in
your
LA
garbage.
on the
In
road.
LA on the road. So there it is.
And right, and the videos that you showed me, both of them, they're home games.
So let me ask you a question. If you're a Dodgers fan, honestly, let's say this was the Giants and the Astros. Do you feel like the World Series is stolen from you?
If I was a Giants fan, I would feel cheated. At the same time, because I don't have a dog in the race, I don't have that biasy going into this conversation, because the team I hate, even then, the team I hate out of these two teams, because I actually like the Astros, but the team I hate is the one that lost. So I'm like happy about that, but I'm also like, but it wasn't legitimate. But however, when I look at the forest outside of the trees, to me, this was not a runaway success cheating scam. And I don't know how often they were using it. I don't know how much it contributed to the 100+ games that they had been winning in the years up to this win, because they had won like 100 games or more in 3 straight years or something like that. But they only came away with this one championship. I think they won 100 games the last season too. I believe so. Yeah. So 17, 18, and 19. I think they won 100 games. So, and they didn't make it to the World Series. So it's like there's some factors involved there as to why I kind of feel that it makes sense to not strip them of the title, because A, it wasn't a runaway success cheating scam. B, it didn't help them win in 2019. C, it still, the series still went to 7 games, and they could only do it at home, and they still lost at home. At least one game they lost at home. And the final game they won on the road, where they didn't have cheating. But who knows? Perhaps, you could also play devil's advocate, like if the Dodgers didn't change their signs, which, by the way, most teams change their signs on a regular basis because of that fear. Even before this scandal, that was something that most teams do. They change it from team to team to team. And in a World Series, I would imagine you change it. You would also change it too on the off days and the travel days. Who knows? It's hard to know for sure unless somebody says that. But I think there's too much inconsistency with that particular method of cheating, where it wasn't foolproof, and perhaps it gave them an edge in certain time, because still the batter still has to make good contact and get the ball in the plate, not just. But even then, it's still a sub 30% chance that they're going to do that. Not only within the fundamental structure of baseball probability, but also within the context of them also trying to cheat too. It's still same rules apply. It's not like the hitting percentage gets better if you know the pitch. You still have to hit that pitch. Even when batters know what pitch is coming based on the scouting reports, and they make contact with the ball, they're still susceptible to ground balls. They're still susceptible to fly balls, because it's just really hard to put the ball in play when you've got nine guys, in the field that take up majority of all of the open lanes that the ball can land on. So there's just a lot. To me, I don't think you take the title from Houston, but I do think the penalties that have come thus far are not enough. I think some players have to get penalized too. I think it's good that they got rid of AJ Hinch. I think it's good that they got rid of their GM. I think it's good that what's his name?
Beltran?
Yeah, Carlos Beltran. Theo Beltran. I know that Theo Beltran. He got hired to coach the manage the Red Sox, and then I guess he was a quote unquote he was heavily involved in the sign stealing, and he lost his job before even starting his job. So that was nice to see, because this was the same stuck up prick that turned down the Giants, or no, that he played for us for 1 year. But he was kind of a distant teammate. That was the impression I got.
Are you thinking of Alex Cora?
No, Carlos Beltran played for us, and Alex Cora was the
manager.
Oh wait, no. Alex Cora went to the Boston. You're right. Alex Cora went to the Red Sox, and Carlos Beltran went to the Mets.
To the Mets, yeah.
But they both lost their jobs.
Yeah.
It was the point I was getting to. So, and I think those are wise too, because hey, if Carlos Beltran was a heavy part of this scam, then for sure that could have easily been part of the Red Sox championship one, where they won 108 games and won the title last year, or not last year, but the year before.
Yeah, it's okay. So it's really hard. It's really hard to stay biased.
It is hard.
It's hard to stay unbiased when I'm completely biased. And if this happened to us, every Dodger fan would be flipping us off, and be like, "Hey, look what happened." When Dodgers
they'd feel justified even though they didn't win the ring.
I'm saying that if this had happened to us, Dodger fans would be like, like, oh, that's great. What if that's when Dodger fans talk, that's what I hear.
Oh, I see. I hear. To me, to be honest, even before we got on this pod, like my whole focus has just been around the Astros and all the guys. Like to me, I've just been focused on. I don't know how you've perceived this, but my perception has been like, okay, what does this mean for the Astros? And more importantly, who's the next domino that's going to fall? Because that's what I'm kind of expecting.
Well, here's the thing. According to the articles that have come out now, MLB is not going to do anything to the players. They made a deal. They struck a deal where they would have total immunity for complete honesty and just complete honesty about what happened. So I don't think anything's going to happen to the players. People want things.
So they're going to explain what they did and how they did it, but without consequence.
Yeah. So basically,
it's a weird deal.
Yeah, that was the deal. Because okay,
it's like criminal court where they make a plea deal.
It's basically that's what it was, a plea deal. That's exactly what it was. And apparently, because the union was like, if you try and come after these players, we're going to make your life a living nightmare. The union came out and was like, we're going to protect the MLB players. And then they're like, okay, well, let's strike a deal. And they're like, what's the deal? And they're like, we'll give you total immunity if you let these guys just tell us the truth. Just be completely open. We want an open door. We want know exactly what happened. So and so then that's exactly where we're at with it. So I don't think anything's going to happen to the players. I don't think anything is going to happen. It is so crazy to me. Now, like I said,
well, it always functions from the top down with things like this, right? Although in the Patriots case, everyone kept their job. It was just fines and they lost draft picks.
Dope. Yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely. So let's go. I want to go back to this though. Let me finish this train of thought. If this was the Giants and this happened in 2014, say to the Royals, right? We lose to the Royals. Dodger fans would have no mercy on us. They would not care. They would literally not care. So I don't really care about the Dodgers, but I would probably feel cheated. I'd be like, well, our chances are.
If you were a Dodger fan,
no, if I was a Giants, if this had happened to the Giants, I would feel cheated because I go, well, we lost 2 of the 3 games in Houston. Who's to say that if we didn't, we would have even gotten to a Game 7? We won one of the games. We still were able to win one with them, but at the same time, the last 2 and the first 2 all on the road. So it's not like.
What about the reverse? Sorry to interrupt, but what about it for reverse? What if you're an Astros fan? How do you feel about the win? Do you feel legitimate, or does it feel tainted?
So let's talk about that. Okay, this is a great question. So let's pretend it comes out.
What if the Giants?
The Giants are the cheaters. Giants were stealing signs, and that's how they beat the Kansas City Royals. Right? That's how they did it. Madison Bumgarner's, career-defining moment that literally probably thrust him into the Hall of Fame, guaranteed. Thrust Bruce Bochy in the Hall of Fame, Buster Posey in the Hall of Fame, is gone because those sons of bitches were stealing signs. Man, that would be a tough place. I would say, okay, so whack. I'm so disappointed in my team, but we still had to beat you on the road. We still had to play 4 games on the road where we weren't able to steal the signs, right? Isn't that what I would say?
Yeah.
Wouldn't I say that?
Yeah.
Would you say that?
Assuming the signs weren't changed at those, or assuming the signs were changed at those on those road games, and that you couldn't just You couldn't bank on the signs being the same as the ones you deciphered at home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's just very tricky, and then there were a couple people were like, Kershaw should come out and say something, shouldn't he? And I'm like, no, he shouldn't. Kershaw has coughed up
he was shitty whether they were cheating or not. You don't have to cheat against Kershaw in the playoffs.
And that's been proven every year in the post.
Yes.
Every year. I'm like, no.
That's a no-brainer. That's not even a big brain take.
No. I was like, no, Kershaw should not Kershaw should do exactly what he's done. Keep his mouth shut and pretend that nothing of this has ever happened, because all it's going to do for him is open up a whole can of worms that nobody is interested in dealing with. You're just going to have to deal with everyone very annoyed at Kershaw because, he's failed all the time. But that's probably what I would say. I would say, okay, total bullshit. I'm super pissed at the Giants for doing this. This is super whack. But they still had to play 4 games on the road where they weren't able to do this. That's what I would say. What would you say?
To which part?
If the Giants were caught cheating, let's say 2017 against the Royals.
It's hard because I basically have to imagine it in my head, because none of our teams have ever done that, because we're legendary without the need of cheating. But I guess, hypothetically speaking, if they were cheating, it would feel kind of illegitimate to me. It'd be like, man, it kind of it's on the record books, and I see it there, and I see 3 out of 5, rings, 3 out of 5 years. But that last one, man, I would have to put I would have to personally put an asterisk on it. Not, it's not like there's a real asterisk that's going to be placed on this one in Baseball Reference, or
kind of should be, though, right?
Yeah, I think so. In Football Reference, there should be at least 1 or 2 asterisks on the Patriots championships. 100%. At least, Deflategate didn't seem like it was all that big of an advantage, but Spygate, filming practices, that's deep inside baseball you're gathering there. That gives you a huge edge on Sunday, because of the complexity of football and how many moving parts there are, and to steal, to know what those concepts are prior to it, because if you know what the whole concepts are, then all you have to do is call the right defenses, or, conversely call the right offensive plays to beat those defensive concepts. Because as a whole, there's only so many adjustments that can make. Once the play starts unraveling, the 11 guys are in motion, all with their own individual assignments, then, it's a game of inches, for a reason. Because if one person is in the wrong position, or if one person is exploited, then that receiver or that running back or that quarterback is able to make a play. And all you need is, one guy out of your options to make a play on those 11 guys in order for the play to work. So Spygate, to me, absolutely deserves an asterisk, but that, that's another cast. You have to go to, I don't even know if they talk about Spygate on the Pats podcast, whatever the hell it's called.
Red and Blue cast?
I don't know what it's called.
I don't know. The TB12 cast?
Yeah, exactly. It all revolves around Tom Brady. The TB12 cast.
Yeah, it would be tough. I think you asked even a far more potent question, which is, how would we feel if it was the Giants that were caught cheating?
Yeah, exactly. What if you're on the winning side of that?
That's a tough question. Let's say this. Let's say they go. Let's go back in time. Let's go on our time machine. Let's go back to the good old year of 1995, and it is August. It's the beginning of the preseason for the 1995-96 season, and an article comes out from the worst journalist on the planet, Tim Kawakami, and Tim Kawakami puts out an article.
God, that would be even worse. If he was the one that broke it.
Oh God! And so let's say Tim Kawakami. Oh, by the way, GoldCast Nation, just want to let you know, Tim Kawakami blocked me. Pretty happy.
Because Tim Kawakami is the most insecure writer in sports, and he just blocks everybody for any reason.
I didn't even insult
bad.
him. Okay, for the record, all I said was some other people. He got into an argument with Haralabob about Las Vegas sports betting, which you should never do because Haralabob is a genius. He's literally one of the most successful sports bettors of all time, an absolute brilliant person when it comes to sports betting and his algorithms and the mathematical way in which he approached it. Haralabob said some off color stuff about Vegas and how betting odds are created, and Haralabob just Tim Kawakami said it, and Haralabob just railed into him. And then a couple guys at the bottom of the third were like, "Hey, Tim Kawakami blocked me. Oh man, he blocked me too." And I was like, "Hey, getting blocked by Tim Kawakami, that's a badge of honor." And then Tim Kawakami blocked me after that. I was blocked the next day. He's so insecure, which means he went through all the comments and read everyone's comment. Oh my God!
Right, he had to get through them to get to, and it's almost like he was waiting. He's like looking for like who are the people that are gonna bandwagon, Haralabob correcting me. Who are the people that are going to be jumping on that to kind of poke at me for getting it wrong? It's like he's looking for that, and it's like, oh, there they are, block. It's like the insecurity of him is he's like off the rails insecure. It's really bad.
It is really bad. It is. It's super lame. Super lame. But yeah, so let's say he sits there. So let me finish this thought experiment. We're back now in 1996, start of the 95. It started the 95 preseason for the 95-96 season. And Tim Kawakami releases an article, 49ers recording practices, explains dominance from 89 to 95. And we find that the last two Super Bowls, they were recording the practices. How do you feel? How do you feel about the 49ers going into that exact scenario there? It's kind of the same scenario as we talked about now, but now it's flipped to the Niners. So now we people are, on the Seahawks cast, the 12th cast, they're going, what they should do is put a little asterisk next to those last two 49ers Super Bowl wins.
It's funny because that's what they sound like.
We're the worst. We're so horrible. We're so trolling. We're
funny.
Very trolling on today's podcast. This is a very trollish podcast. We trolled the Dodgers. We're trolling Tim. Well, actually, we haven't trolled the Dodgers. We've been actually pretty nice to them today. Made fun of Tim Kawakami, and that was definitely a troll of the Seahawks. So they go, so yeah, an asterisk. Right, Bayman? Of course, Judy. Okay. So what? Where do you think it? How do you feel then? How do you feel if the Niners did it in football?
I think it would suck. I think eventually you would just like. Over time, you would just be like, you know what, it happened, but, the win's a win. And, over time, I would probably find reasons and data to just say like, hey, there were opportunities. And, outside of that, we still won. So, but then you could always, I guess someone could always just, the counter argument would be like, yeah, but the reason why you won is because you had prior knowledge of the scheme going into it. So you didn't have to make any adjustments. You didn't earn it. You didn't earn those adjustments on your own. You stole those adjustments illegitimately. But I mean, I guess I'm trying to.
As a fan, would you just kind of brush it?
It's a hard one. It's a hard one to hypothetically, make up in your head without going through it. But I'm guessing that I would eventually just try to make up, like I would get over it. It's like anything else. Like if it's a bad breakup out of a relationship, eventually you get over that. You're freaking pissed when it first happens, or maybe, if you're the one that dumps her because of whatever, it's an easier pill to swallow. It's different when you're on the receiving end. So if you're on the giving end, I feel like it depends on the evidence. Like, cause Spygate, it never came out and said that, hey, Spygate was legitimately used in X, Y, and Z seasons.
Well, yeah, because Roger Goodell threw away all the tapes.
Yeah, it was like, it's just weird. Which to me, like,
that was so shady.
if that's what he did, then that means it totally had to do with the championship. How many championships? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it definitely had to do with at least one. At least one.
Mm-hmm. And he was more about it. For him, it came more down to the integrity of what that championship symbolizes, and probably really had nothing to do with protecting the Patriots.
Yeah, it had more to do with
Protecting the shield.
the image of the NFL.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a real tough one. It's a real tricky scenario. I mean, honestly, if you're an LA fan, this has been a tough decade for LA sports. This has been rough. The Dodgers have been perennial World Series door knockers and have lost two huge ones in devastating fashion. Didn't even get out of the first round here. Rams go all in, and it works. They get to the Super Bowl. They only put up 3 points against a hobbled Tom Brady offense. That sucks. The Lakers just sucked, and they get LeBron. They think they're going to come. They think they're coming for the throne with the Warriors. And then he gets hurt, and he's gone. And I still think the Clippers are going to win this season. And we'll talk more about that as we move into basketball. But I mean, man, if they weren't such dicks to us about sports, I would almost feel bad for them. But I don't.
Yeah, I don't feel shit. I don't feel anything. I like I said early in the beginning, like my focus has just kind of been around Houston and like how that is going to affect Major League Baseball, because rules are going to come down. Like the players are going to come away with nothing, like not even a slap on the wrist. But what is going to come out of it are some rule changes for sure. Rule changes that will be enforced at every stadium. And I don't know if they're going to, I doubt they hire like personnel to now monitor the game. I know there are people that monitor, there's a bigger MLB, general MLB presence during the tournament and more so at the World Series. And that will certainly be the case going forward. But as far as the regular season is concerned, they're just going to have some, prohibitive rules that
Maybe
don't require, an extra set of eyes.
Checks.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I don't think they're going to hire extra eyes to do it, but they are going to make some prohibitive rules that all teams are going to have to abide by. And then those rules will be periodically checked on, and they'll be unscheduled, just like PED tests are unscheduled, something like that.
What's really interesting? What's really interesting is just the amount of scandals that exist in baseball. Baseball is so deeply rooted in cheating. It's so deeply rooted in cheating
since its conception. Yeah.
Yeah, since
the biggest ones just being, the steroid era and this sign stealing.
The Black
thing.
Sox. Remember the Black Sox from like around almost 100 years ago? The Chicago Black Sox, the White Sox had done. They basically purposely coughed up the World Series to sway betting, and it was. I mean, baseball is just so deep in its cheating. It's fascinating. People love to cheat in baseball. It's like their jam. They live for that shit.
It's so weird. It's to me, it's the only one of the three major sports that where successful players are still at a, disadvantage. At least statistically, it looks like the players are not performing well, even though they are. Like if you're a good hitter, great hitters are 300 and above, but and it's marked as
that means you strike out 6 to 7 out of 10 times.
Right. That's exactly my point. So it's written as a decimal, so it looks impressive. Ooh, 300. But the truth is, it's 30%. That's what that equates to. And all of the other hitters, they're all your average hitters are all below that. They're like 250. You know, you're going to AAA if you're hovering around 220, unless you have an amazing glove at shortstop. Then you'll get to stick around. Or if you happen to be a awesome catcher and you work wonders facilitating pitches with your pitching staff. Those are the only two instances where you get to hang around, or if there's just not enough depth to cover to make up for a shitty bat. But other than that, you know, like even the Astros starting roster, Brian McCann, the leadoff hitter who was a catcher, he was batting 241, 24%. You know, their best player, Jose Altuve, he was 35%. Rounded up, he was 35%.
Can I talk about why Altuve hurts me the most? Because it's about my height. Looks like he could be our cousin, and he was Latino. Broke my heart.
Yeah,
broke my heart. I love Altuve.
Primo Altuve.
Primo, ¿qué pasó, primo? ¿Qué pasó? ¿Por qué?
Carlos Beltran too.
¿Por qué, primo? Yeah, it was pretty fun.
He's like the he married in cousin. He's not a blood cousin.
Beltran? Yeah,
yes.
Altuve looks like he could be literally our cousin, and I would totally believe it. They're like, oh yeah, your cousin Jose? Oh, you don't know Jose Altuve is your cousin, your primo. ¿Qué pasó? ¿Por qué? And so, yeah. Anyways, any final thoughts on this? It was kind of an interesting thought experiment to go through it. If the Niners and the Giants were winners, that was were the winners and the recipient, the recipients of the cheating. The not the recipients, but the benefactors of it. You know.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it would take some of the thunder away, but I think over time, like a bad breakup, it would just kind of fade out. Like, you know, does Bill Simmons ever show any remorse or regret?
So defensive. He in fact half the time he always says it was a lie, and he always does it really snarkily and like jokingly, where it sounds like he doesn't really believe himself, but he's just going to be a stubborn brat about it because it's his team,
right? Because the truth of the matter is, you know, the fact that they did cheat and that one or more of those championships is illegitimate that road leads to Tom Brady's not the greatest of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to say that he didn't cheat. As far as I understand, he didn't, except for Deflategate. It sure as hell seemed like he knew what he was doing there and just tried to play a deer in the headlights, and it came off so bad when that came out. But that particular type of cheating, that small little nuance adjustment that they made to the ball, even though it did help assist in like reduce fumbles and gives you a better grip on the ball when throwing it, all those kinds of things, that didn't necessarily equate to, you know, a dominance of wins. You know, they weren't. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they were. I don't think they did that during the 16-0 run. So because the Deflategate came after the fact, and you know, Joe Montana came out and said, like, you know, that does make it is a big deal, but you know, don't know if it leads to a win per se. To me, filming someone else's practice, that's way more.
Well, that's on the level of stealing signs.
Yeah, exactly. That's way more advantageous to that in terms of affecting the outcome of a game than adjusting, you know, the ball, the air in a ball.
Yeah. Anyways, go to youtube.com/thegoldcast and let us know what you think. Go on there and tell us your thoughts. What do you think about the sign stealing? What do you do? I don't think the Astros should be stripped either. I forgot to say that. I don't think I ever said that in this pod. I don't think they should be stripped. I think there was enough legitimacy there. Definitely gave them an edge, no question. But no, sorry. You put an asterisk.
It went to 7 games, and they were
at home for the first 2 and the last 2.
Yep. So, in other words, they could only cheat, you know, in the middle of the series.
And they lost one of those games.
Yep.
So, yeah. Oh, man, Dodger fans will be cursing our names right now. Good.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to add to the comments, too, is put the shoe on the other foot. You know, how would you guys feel? Same question we discussed here. How would you guys feel if the Niners or the Giants did that? You know, would it – or the Warriors for that matter? You know, would it delegitimize the championship, any of those championships for you? Or would you just kind of defend it, take a Bill Simmons stance where you're just kind of in denial about it?
Yeah, exactly. Let us know in the comments at youtube.com/thegoldcast. So concludes another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis first, baby.
Boom. We'll see you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel. Screw the Dodgers.
This is the GoldCast.